lot of questions surrounding today, round four here in the GT3 World Championship on RCI TV, and some of them have nothing to do with the championship. Hello and welcome in. I'm Jesse Lee, joined by Ryan Gill and Stewie in the box with you for round four here at Monza. And we have a lot of questions to get through, but we'll first talk about the elephant in the room. We're going to throw it down to Ryan Gill. A lot of issues just getting into the track today, Ryan. We could see some problems.
Good evening, Jesse, and good evening to everyone at home as well. Yes, quite a few issues getting into the circuit today. It's not usually an issue that we typically encounter, is it? But we're here in the commentary box. We have 25 drivers out in pit lane around on the track, so we have got quite a few drivers out here tonight. But yes, there is a lot of question marks over. Well, will this race go ahead? If it will it make it to the end of the race? And, well, I suppose if we do make it to the end of the race, the big question is going to be, who's going to be the winner? Because everything's kind of been tipped on its head a bit.
Yeah, it sure has. Of course, there was a very large update. The 1.8 update to ACC coming this week has sent all of these teams scrambling to refamiliarize themselves with their cars. Of course, the car that they picked at the beginning of the season, they will be stuck with that car. They had no idea when 1.8 would come out. We didn't either, if we're completely honest. And here it has come out right in the middle of this Friday championship.
Yeah, there have been some fixes come out over the last 24 to 48 hours to try and address some of the issues that we talked about getting into the circuit today, but there's no concrete proof that any of that has fixed anything. So we kind of just sit here in bated breath, hoping that everything will go well. Things went well for the Thursday Championship yesterday, Jesse, which you were present for, and I'm going to touch wood that everything is going to go well here today. But the big patch talked about is definitely going to be one of the biggest points of conversation today. I get the feeling in the race, and obviously a big point of conversation yesterday in the Thursday races, how different all of the cars feel around here now, how the BOP has changed, and of course how the drivers adapt to the new physics changes. I spoke Tom Hornsby about the SRO Asia race for the 10-hour Suzuka, which has unfortunately been cancelled just a couple of hours ago. That race would have been a race of adaptability, and I think that's going to be kind of the same thing here tonight. Who can adapt to the new physics the fastest? We know that a lot of the pro drivers will probably have already adapted to them quite well, as we see George Boothby and Tinko van der Velde at the top of the timing boards as per usual, but a few new names up there at the top as well, and a couple of unfamiliar manufacturers creeping into the top 10.
Yeah, exactly. Who would have ever called Porsche being the top step? I know it's George Boothby and I know it's Jardier in the top five and how good they are, but they even have their limits of what the machinery is usually capable of. Today, though, Porsche standing tall at perhaps the most unlikeliest of track, especially a track that they share with the likes of McLaren, AMG, Honda, the like, and cannot forget Bentley, surely. But today, it's looking like Porsche. How extensive was the 1.8 update? We could be here all night discussing that, folks, but as simple as this, all you really need to know, every car, for better or for worse, because it is a little bit of both in some cases, handle completely different. Some of the BOP is different, especially for the older cars that are no longer being run in the series. It's a lot to take in. This patch came out Tuesday. To think about the week these drivers have had, if they've been in all the races here at RCI, at least on Monday for Porsche Cup, everything was fine. Then on Thursday for GT4s, things were different. Today, the very first GT race here on RCI TV with this new BOP. Curveballs indeed, Ryan.
Yeah, definite curveballs, and it's going to be interesting as well, because we were talking to Mikhail Sundstrom off air, and he said, do any of you have a reference for what a good lap time is around Monza anymore? And I think that sets a bit of the tone tonight, doesn't it, Jesse Lee, when I think a lot of the drivers don't even know what a good lap time is. What's going to be a world beater lap time for pole position this evening. I don't think anyone really has a solid idea about what is going to be enough for pole position, and that's really exciting, not just for us but for the drivers and for all of you guys at home as well watching. But we are heading into an unknown, and we have seen some manufacturers, like you said, really throw themselves up into the mix of it. Of course, the Porsches, which uh, never been, should we say, credited for straight line speed. We do have George Boothby at the top of the timings at the end of practice, and Jardia's in the top 10 as well. We saw the Nissan up there towards the midway through practice, and Max Payne in fourth at the moment. But we have heard that some of the cars that are no longer in the GT World Challenge Europe Series have been getting a bit of extra treatment in the BOP category to allow them to be a bit more competitive or rein them in a bit if they're powerful at certain tracks. So I think it's great. I think we've got more manufacturers that can fight at the top across all the different tracks now, hopefully, and a lot of drivers still adapting to the new physics. And the only way you're going to know for sure how you adapt to the new physics is across the course of a 1 hour race. And well, this is a 75-minute race, so they've got to be a bit extra careful on the tyres, which have had quite a big overhaul to them as well. But qualifying for round 4 of the season is live here at Monza, and it's 5 a.m. in the morning, bright and early, Jen.
A little bit too early for my liking, but nonetheless, very early indeed, and quali in the dark, a very stark contrast from practice in the afternoon. You may be wondering, with some of the issues, how we were able to get around it yesterday. Well, nobody really knows. We had issues in practice and qualifying, but once the race got going, everything went completely smoothly. We're hoping for the same thing today, but race admin Bart Macha has a plan just in case it doesn't, and here is the RCI plan for today. If qualifying crashes or there's an issue with connectivity in qualifying, we will simply restart qualifying. If we make it past qualifying and into the race and it crashes, we will make one attempt at restarting the race based on the qualifying order. If anything goes wrong past that point, we're going to have to call the race. But if we make it to the halfway point or beyond, points will be awarded based on, I'm assuming, how much race was ran.
Yeah, so obviously Bart Matcher, who is the quote-unquote race director and manager for the series, he has set down the rule. This is what's going to happen. This is the protocol. We have a plan of action should anything go wrong tonight. And well, that gives us a little more comfort knowing that the admin is on top of it, and I suppose it gives the drivers some comfort as well, because they know exactly what's going to happen if servers go down. But here we go then, the first qualifying lap of the session. Going to be George Boothby in the number 75 Porsche, running us all the way down towards the first Variante chicane here in the dark. And it has to be said, Jesse, qualifying in the dark for a race that is going to take place in the day, a bit unusual.
Well, it changes the eye level. It changes what your reference points are, and you're always told it doesn't matter if you're in a go-kart or a Formula One car. You never choose your braking points by shadows or anything that may move or change. Why the braking markers are so important, but of course, changing the time of day is big as well. That's why in a race, endurance racing anyway, if you have a driver that is comfortable in the night, you're not going to stick him out there in the day and then make him go do night stuff, because that's going to change the image he has in his head. It's going to mess with his readiness. Well, unfortunately, all of these teams are kind of in that same boat where they are racing in the daytime and now early morning trying to get this qualifying in, and it can be just a bit dangerous as well. Look for a couple cars to go off.
George Boothby go here as well, and you can see just riding the car completely over the curbs, maximizing everything that he can across the circuit. Our video producer and broadcaster here, Stewie, has just let me know that the Porsche did get 10 kilos of weight removed from it for Monza, so its BOP has been a bit more lenient towards it. So It is a bit better on the straights now here at Monza, and that can play a part in why the Porsches were a bit higher up the order, but also George Boothby's pace. Absolutely incredible, and a 1:47.690 to start the qualifying session. And that will be almost matched by Tinko van der Velde, who is just 7/100ths of a second away. But a few drivers still quite a fair ways off their pace.
That's pretty interesting too, if you think about it. That's just about the distance they were apart in practice as well. Talked all that game about the light changing and maybe rattling some of the drivers. Well, you expect the pros here to not be as rattled, especially the guys at the top. They're completely unfazed by that. A 47.690, your first lap out. Fantastic. Tinko very nearly making the mark himself. Verstappen comes through in the 747 Bentley and takes third. Jardier can only do eighth on that first lap, but if you are a Jardier fan, I really wouldn't worry about that too much. That was the equivalent of a warm-up lap for him, I am sure. The 39 Porsche, of course, capable of a little bit more than that. At least he showed that in practice. Now everybody cycling through. Savalainen fourth, Stevenson fifth. That's your top five. A couple of Bentleys in the top five. That's almost status quo right there if it wasn't for that Porsche up front.
So George Boothby does lead the way. Verstappen filtering into that third place, and Jonas Savalainen in fourth. It is great to see four different manufacturers in the top four. And at the moment, we do have Herbert Frischel as well in the Honda down in eighth. So the Honda creeping up into the top 10 places initially. And it was a very, very good lap from George Boothby, 1:47.690. That's about a tenth and a half away from what he achieved at the end of practice. So not too far off of what they were doing towards the end of practice, where George Boothby probably was doing those quali runs and getting the car ready for qualifying. We'll have to see if he can find any extra pace. Of course, completely different conditions and time of day to the practice session earlier today as well. So that kind of makes it a double impressive as well, as Herbert Frischel actually improves on his lap time and goes up to third, just a tenth off of provisional pole.
Qualifying here is always a close affair. Today is going to be absolutely no different, and you're likely going to see the better part of 23 cars all within just about a second, despite the fact there's 6 or 7 manufacturers on display here today. And here is Martin Grady. Tidge, he's 19th place right now, a little bit off of the pace. We'll see what this lap is looking like. This is looking like a certain improvement for Tidge as he comes to the line, trying to get out of 19th place. How far up will he go? And only to 16th, so some work to do. A 48.655 for Martin Grady, but just outside top 15.
Got himself right alongside Valentin Barrier at the moment on the provisional grid, and that's not bad company to have yourself with. Valentin Barrier's got plenty of pace behind him as well. Currently on board with George Boothby, our provisional pole setter at the moment. Is at the moment, as I just checked my timing screen, went blank for a moment. He is up on his lap time by about a third of a tenth, I would say. Not too much up on his lap time, not eat out too much, and he has actually lost a bit of time actually coming into his car and going through and out now, slightly off. And Tinko van der Velde was up by 0.2 of a second, but he has lost that time now. So Tinko van der Velde gained plenty of time through the first chicane, but lost it on the exit. Now, probably going to have to wait for another time by to have another go at that again with 2 minutes and seconds remaining, Jesse. They don't have too much longer. 2 laps maximum for everyone else out on track here.
Well, if you haven't got a good lap in, now's the time to get it done. And I think there's a couple of teams, a couple of drivers there languishing around the top 10 mark that are all looking to improve. Willard Stevenson, one of those drivers, a 48.0 there by Stevenson, knocks him up into 7th place position. And the 108 Bentley will take no further part in this session. Jonas Savalainen, by the way, has taken the 2nd place mark, about a 10th off of George Boothby with his 47.660. Savalainen has also joined them in the garage. Will take no further part. Verstappen, the other driver in the top 10, who is also finished with qualifying. Martin Grady going quicker on that lap up into top 12. That's more like it out of Tidge, and that is the end of their qualifying run it would seem. But what does George Boothby have? A little bit too close for comfort, you would have to imagine, for George, for the Yaz Heat 75 driver. We'll try to go ahead and level that mark again, go faster for a third time.
So George Boothby leading the way from Jonas Savalainen, Tinker van der Velde, Herbert Frischel, and Christian Streppen. 5 different manufacturers covering the top 5. It's looking very, very close here. And I'm currently watching Mikael Sundström, who's up on his lap time by about 0.3 of a second as well as he comes into the final corner. Bit of a twitch as well as he comes out of the final corner, and his lap is actually invalid at this point, so it won't matter. But he will start another lap. He crosses the line now, and we have to hope that one is valid on the end of it. Martin Lawrence moving into the top 10 as well, but he's down by 4 tenths at the moment. Here comes George Boothby, about a quarter of a second up on his lap time at the moment. He goes faster, 1:47.422, and he has essentially a third of a second in hand over his closest rival.
I know some of these drivers and teams have been pairing off, and they've been working on this for the past 2 days, trying to figure out, just what exactly has changed, how to change the setup, what they need to do to get some of the speed back. I think everybody practiced a little bit slower than they were pre-patch. Everyone's trying to find the speed back. I don't think that's affected Yaz Heat almost at all. What does Ippolito have at the line? 18th place, an improvement of 48 for them. Tico van der Velde still out on the circuit. The 166 McLaren trying to improve upon their lap, needs better than a 47.7 to get that done as they enter the Parabolica and to the front straightaway. This is looking like this might be something. Only needs a few thousandths to get back on the front row. Will it be? Yes, it will. A 47.547. Good enough for second place right now, and an excellent lap at that.
Yeah, Tinker van der Velde will be a bit frustrated though. He was almost 0.3 of a second up on that lap coming out of the second Lesmo, and he lost that time somewhere. So he'll be frustrated. That could have been a provisional pole run for him. George Boothby is still out there on a valid lap at this point. He can still improve. That is one thing to keep in mind. Here comes Mikael Sundström, who was on a valid lap this time around, and he will go as high as 7th. George Boothby still coming around, and he is going to finish out his qualifying session. He will take no further part, straight into the barrier, as that lap is no good. And here is Herbert Frischel, who is up on his lap time by about 0.2 of a second. He will cross the line. He will go third to put the NSX on the second row of the grid. And George Boothby will take pole position here in Monza. It's a Porsche on pole, and I'm sure that pleases our broadcaster Stewie tonight.
It pleases him, but I'm pleased by what I see here. The qualifying results confirm Boothby the quickest, a 47.422. But you'll notice those purple sectors, no driver had more than one purple sector. And in fact, Tico van der Velde, who qualified second, wasn't fastest in any particular sector, just happened to be better average than almost anyone else. Nigh on George Boothby, of course. Well, there it is. Boothby, van der Velde, your front row for Shell, Savalainen, Verstappen, Berrier, Sundstrom, Kavaka, Jardier, and Stevenson, your top 10. An excellent qualifying session, if I may say so myself. Got a Honda in there and a Porsche up front. Who would have ever thought? Well, we've had 3 rounds prior to today, and here's how they've shaken out. It has been the Boothby and Jardier show. George Boothby leads 195 points to Jardier's 174. Tico van der Velde, who has put their name in the hat as a contender here with 166, has a better than good chance at taking this fight to the top 2 Yaz Heat drivers. Nicholas Taylor in 4th place on 144 points. João Vaca in the 33 rounds out the top 5 with 108 points behind 4th place, of course. Konstantin Soldatov in the 911 AMR V8 Vantage with 95. Harry Conway, who's not here tonight, has 87 points. Caracas in the 15 with 84, level with Christoph Verstreppen. And of course, rounding out the top 10, you know him, Tidge, Martin Grady with 80 points. The back half here, actually, I should say the middle half. Dubel in the 840 with 66. Minnow Crozen with 57 points. Martin Lawrence with 1 point behind them with 56. 1 point behind them, you're going to see a common theme here. Mikhail Sundstrom, and then 1 point behind them, Rins Krozen. Very close racing indeed in the top 15, all with a shot of getting inside the top 10, mind you. Herbert Ferschel in 16th place with 47 points, 1 point behind Dario Barzaghi in the 17th place position. Jan Climbs, the 328 with 45 points. Vasily Anafreev with 42. Harley Chamberlain rounds out the top 20 with 34. And these are the drivers that have had a bit of a struggle this season. It has to be said. Darren Mulholland with 33, Masum with 31, tied with William Stevenson back in 24th place. Batistella with 20, Bordai on 18, tied with Stakecki. Barrier with 17, Daldigny 15, Thomas with 10, and Jonas Savalainen, who it's incredible to think they only have 9 points. There you have it in 30th place, has missed some rounds this season. And the back half here, Max Payne has 8, Beeson with 7, Vining with 3, and nobody else here has scored points. I saw Ippolito qualifying, so hopefully they get some points today. I don't think that team has been in any of the first 3 rounds today, and there's only one driver that is not officially a part of this championship anymore and has been disqualified due to a no show. But other than that, all the drivers still in this championship near the half point.
I think one of the big things looking at the championship standings and just how close it is, not just at the top, but throughout the midfield as well, Jesse Lee. Three different winners, three races. George Bisbee, Jaroslav Honzik, and Tinko van der Velde. And, well, can we make it 4 out of 4? Potentially. I mean, we've got Herbert Frischel and Jonas Savalainen on the second row of the grid. They're starting behind two of the race winners this season. They could definitely mix things up. Jardier, of course, they're up in the championship at the moment, qualifying down in ninth. He's got his work cut out for him.
He sure does. It's a long way to come back, but I always say this about Jardier, and I will continue to defend him in this particular respect. It doesn't matter where Jardier qualifies, always races better than he qualified. I think he qualified second or third in race two and won that race. How incredible is that? That's what I'm talking about. He has come from dead last on a grid, a race that you and I were a part of as well, Ryan, and won that race. It was 20 plus cars. Incredible stuff. It can happen here today. You can't ever count out Jardier in a race, but for George Boothby, he has the best seat in the house again. But of course, the first 2 rounds, we were talking about, oh, it's going to be the Jardier and Boothby show. And then, of course, Tinko put his name in the hat a week ago. Like you said, anything is possible. Could we see Calamity on lap one completely change this race as well? You know how turn one at Monza go.
We do know how turn one at Monza goes, but I think everyone at home will be hoping for a clean start to the race tonight. I'm sure the drivers will as well, but it is all in their hands. But in case there is any accidents, the live stewarding team today will be here to look after it. They have been for the rest of the season so far. Of course, a lot to unpack in this race, Jesse Lee. We are 1 minute away or just over from the start of the formation lap. We have a Porsche on pole at Monza, which already in and of itself sounds weird to say. But at the same time, we have George Boothby and Tinko van der Velde on the front row. It's hard to get more exciting than that. We have Herbert Frischel and Jonas Savalainen on the second row of the grid. Paul Bentley third row as well, with the likes of Verstappen and Valentin Barrier. So could be so many questions, so many different ways that this race could go. But I suppose it's time we throw our hat in the ring, Jesse Lee. Who's going to be the driver to watch tonight? Who is your race winner tonight?
I don't know who the race winner is, but don't take your eyes off that Honda starting on the second row, and don't take your eyes off Tico van der Velde either. Of course, van der Velde getting a win and getting themselves in a position. take full advantage of this championship on a day where Jardier has to come through the field. I don't doubt Jardier will, but drag racing down the straight line, down a straightaway, I know the Porsche is good here now. It's very obvious that the Porsche has speed here, but I still wouldn't bet against some of those other cars with a V8 starting behind him and beside him. And you never know, getting a run down into turn one could be the difference between victory and defeat here today. I'm taking Tico van der Velde.
Well, rather frustratingly, you chose my pick, so I'm going to have to go for someone else. And you know what? I'm going to go for a sort of a different shout. I am going to go for Herbert Frechel in the in the NSX. I think I agree with you that that car is good on the straights. It probably has been tuned a bit for how the BOP works here around Monza, so it's going to be interesting to see how it behaves. But Herbert Frechel throwing it onto the second row of the grid, right towards the end of qualifying, was fantastic. Definitely one to watch as well. Keep an eye on the Nissan of Max Payne as well, all the way down in 15th. That car has been brought up to pace a bit around a lot of the circuits where it was lacking pace. So it's going to be interesting to see how he can use the grunt of that Nissan on the straights now and see which cars he can really get the moves done at the end of the main straight.
Well, of course, you can notice there's been more than differences with the cars. There's also some differences with broadcasting in the 1.8 version of Assetto Corsa Competizione. And of course, you can see that here as our broadcaster playing with some of the settings. You can tell it looks a bit different, looks a bit more realistic, and a bit more crisp as well. We love to see that from Kunos, and it has had a dramatic effect on the lighting and the way that just the cameras work, and its fantastic effects and all of that. And of course, before we go green today, big thank you to our partners, Race Department, AK Informatica, Driver61, Fanatec, and SimRacing.gp. You can find more information about those fantastic folks in the description. More about them after the race.
Yeah, of course, a big lighting update as well with the 1.8 update. Definitely something that was noticeable when I switched between the preview build and the 1.7 build, because I had to be there to commentate for Monday night whilst still testing out the preview build, and it was very, very noticeable. And it is great to see the improvements that are constantly being made, and some very exciting things in the year ahead, isn't it, Jesse? I mean, I suppose we should say, if anyone hasn't seen the end of the Kunos keynote for the 1.8 update, some pretty exciting things teased for next year, including Kota and well, the new Lamborghini Super Trofeo that we were already aware of, the BMW M2 CS, I believe it is called, also the Ferrari Evo Challenge, and the new Porsche Cup car. So, well, all of that to unpack sometime next year. But this year, and right here and right now, we have round 4 of the Friday GT3 World Championship, and we have 2 race winners on the front row and 75 minutes of racing set to get underway.
Well, here you come through Parabolica for the last time. The next time will be in Anger. Your front row, George Boothby, Tinko van der Velde, Herbert Frechel, Jonas Savalainen. The next row, what about Verstappen and Berrier in the ground as well? All these drivers have a better than good shot at winning today. It all comes down to turn 1. Will it be clean? We've seen it go both ways. What will it be today? Will George Boothby get a launch, or will it be Tinko van der Velde? And they're green here for round 4 of the Friday GT Championship, and George Boothby is losing them down the straightaway. Tinko goes to the inside. He's defending the Bentley in the background. Verstappen looking for room. 3 wide in the background. They all rush into turn 1, and they're going to be side by side for third. Savalainen and Frechel. Frichel's going to get moved, and it looks like Savalainen's going to take the place. A pretty decent start. Some collisions in the background, a couple of cars off.
Tinko van der Velde really did not get the start he wanted. Dropped back from George Boothby immediately and had to really go defensive into the first chicane, but managed to get it done, managed to keep the place. And speaking of making moves as well, Mikhail
Oh!
Sundstrom has made some moves. Valentin Barrier late on the brakes into Secunda Variante, and he is off. Loses the place to Mikhail Sundstrom, and that is Jardier as well, by the way, who has moved himself up the order right at the start of the race. But Tinko van der Velde, he's recomposed himself. He's got himself back into pace and back into a concentrated mode. Now he's trying to hunt down George Boothby as we watch Jaroslav Honzik look at the back, or look at the front of Mikhail Sundstrom's car.
Bad news for any fans of the 966 and Max Payne. That Nissan GTR has went off in the Secunda Variante, the second chicane. And meanwhile, as we come into the Scari, very close there, you side by side, but you got to get single file. Otherwise, you may go over the sausage curbs, or even worse, go off into the dirt as they all sort it out. And they continue now down into the Parabolica. It's been a pretty decent lap. We're going to take a look back at what happened to Valentin Barrier. We saw him go wide in the second chicane, and just looks like he ran out of room and erred on the side of caution right there, Ryan Gill.
I mean, it's 75 minutes, it's a long race, probably just got the braking markers a bit wrong, realised he was on the outside. Mikhail Sundstrom had that position. He wasn't really going to lose it that easily. Valentin Barrier has managed to get past Mikhail Sundstrom, and he's slipstreaming Jardier down the main straight at the moment as we see Christopher Verstappen on the inside of Jonas Savalainen, and he takes the position out of the corner, and the Bentley up into fourth place. And looking in the background as well, as you can see George Boothby with the fastest lap of the race, because he was first driver to cross the line from the start. We'll see the replay here of so in the number 68. There was a bit of bumping going on towards the back of the field through turn one, but I'll tell you what, nothing too bad going there. The stewards will have a little bit of a look at it, but I don't think there will be much coming out of that one.
I think that was Climbs in the 329 that went through the chicane. I think maybe they thought it was safer to do that. That's okay, as long as you don't gain time. But we will be paying attention to that. We haven't even talked about the live stewards. We didn't have live stewarding on Thursday. Of course, we do have live stewarding on every Friday championship, and today is no different. They'll be paying very close attention. There was a lot of bumper cars action there, but of course we, as well as the sim, have new rules. Our new rules pertaining to stewarding, of course. These drivers will be aware of it, as it is the fourth race under those new rules, and a lot of times they just let that stuff go, is my point I'm getting at with the bumper cars. As long as nobody gains or loses anything, it really is inconsequential.
Yeah, the students will be hoping for a bit of a quiet evening tonight, but they are having a couple of look at things already, and we'll let them get on with their businesses. Alexander Borodai has a look on the inside, and the Lexus starting to lose it there as well. Going to be on board here, and we're going to see just on the inside. Sudden, does an Aston Martin show up? No, it looks like contact there between Borodai and the Lexus. I'm not too sure there is, as we go three wide now down towards turn one. This never usually ends well. Can we all get it sorted out before the chicane? There's a slight bit of contact, and the Lexus has to take avoiding action and cuts across the chicane as well. They'll have to give up the time gained, or they will get a penalty. And fortunate that that didn't turn into a bigger accident than it already was. The Lexus gives up the time gained. Well done, so will not receive a penalty for that. But my word, could have very much been a scary accident down towards turn one, but three wide. They got it all sorted somehow, Jesse.
Yeah, I spy a couple of cars going three wide into turn one, being a little bit naughty, being a little bit greedy here. Of course, you try to get as much as you can at the start of the race. The Aston absolutely going for it, and creating a three-wide situation. Let them out of steward, have to figure out who's at fault for that and any penalties necessary. There's a couple other things. Some of you at home mentioned the camera differences. Well, also, there is a big difference with how the scoring board works as well. You'll notice a magenta number 2 for Tinko van der Velde. That indicates he has the fastest lap in the race. That'll change if somebody else takes it. But right now, second place Tinko, the fastest car on the track. Of course, the red number is just signifying whatever car is currently being focused on at the moment. But second place, currently quickest, within half a second of our leader, as continues in the middle of the pack. You know, Ryan Gill, the only thing I've ever asked for in updates to Sims is make the cars more raceable and racy. I think 1.8 has absolutely nailed it on the head.
I think James Parker and from what I've also spoken to, Killian Ryan Meenan had very good words, and words that kind of resonated a bit. James Parker said everything has reset to zero, and it is really going to, it's really going to be the top drivers that take advantage of the new physics that we have here and rise to the top. And Killian said this is going to weed out the drivers in the top splits that are kind of there, but they're not really there, as we've got an accident on the exit of the first chicane. Now, what's happened here? We're watching Yang climbs. There's a Lexus and a Bentley.
Oh, no!
Oh, and stops to try and give the place back. The McLaren clips the Bentley. The Porsche has to go around the Lexus. Oh dear, and Alexander Borodai, it looks like that was just making contact with the Bentley, trying to do the right thing, which is to slow down to give the position back, but unfortunately just not really doing so in the correct way, getting in the way of the Porsche, and then the McLaren as well, just getting, unfortunately, all out of sorts, not really knowing which way to go and getting tagged with the Bentley. And, well, once you look at this, Jesse Lee, not only do we have Tinko van der Velde just under 0.3 of a second behind the race leader, we all
easy
have
boys.
a Honda and a Bentley going side by side into the Parabolica, and there is a little bit of a touch there that destabilizes the Nissan, and Christopher Verstappen goes on through. Rochelle's not going to be too happy about that, and I think he's going to want to take that place back very soon, as we see Valentin Barrier still slipstreaming Jardier down the straight. He's going to pull out now onto the inside line. Does the Bentley have the pace over the Porsche? Looks like he does, and he's going to be well ahead as they come into the brakes as well. And Jardier, maybe now just thinking the long game, tuck in behind and use Valentin Barrier to drag himself up to the front.
Beeson here getting a pass done on Taylor, but isn't done yet. Taylor on the outside trying to hang tough, will hang tough indeed. And this is going to be very interesting as all these cars are so close. Are they going to try a 3 wide here? This is normally what happens. What is Caracas going to do in the 15? Following the Aston now, was following the Ferrari. Back to the Ferrari, looking to the outside. The Ferrari says, you're not having it, son. You're not going down the inside as they maintain 2 wide. Caracas plays nice. And all of a sudden, Taylor and Beeson still side by side. Contact there! And it looks like Taylor has gone hard into the Seconda Variante wall.
Oh, more contact then for the stewards to review, as we see the McLaren on the inside now. Caracas trying to get up the inside of Beeson and does so, and is in front of the Ferrari. The Audi of Starhecki behind as well, going to try and get through, but Ferrari holding station at the moment. I've been told the Ferrari feels very, very different to what it used to. No longer one of the powerhouse cars, according to quite a few people along here, as we see Tinko van der Velde, who was putting pressure on George Boothby, now under pressure and getting passed by the Bentley of Christopher Verstappen. And all of a sudden, in the space of 2 laps, this Bentley has moved from 4th into 2nd. When was the last time we saw a Bentley this powerful down the straights at Monza, Jesse Lee? Because I can't quite remember, and if I was George Boothby at this point in time, I'd be slightly concerned about the 747 in behind.
Well, Ryan, I remember, but I didn't have a beard, and I think that was 2 moves for you ago. I think you were still living with some roommates at the time, so I do recall that it was an ever so long time ago. But Verstappen, what about it? We didn't even touch on this in the pre-race. Some of the penalties are starting to come through, but we didn't even talk about this in the pre-race. How are these cars going to handle long term? A lot of these guys have been out here practicing all day. They were practicing yesterday, gathering data, but I wonder how many of them actually have long-haul data. 75-minute race, longer than the standard hour race. You're going to learn a lot about your car. You're going to learn a lot that you're going to take back to your teammates. You're going to take back to your friends. This is, again, a live fire drill, so to speak, for everybody involved. And I think what Christoph Verstappen's learning right now is, oh my God, tires get up to pressure in this Bentley, and she's a flyer. Because just a lap ago, we were talking about van der Velde pressuring Boothby, and now van der Velde back to 3rd. Verstappen now up to 2nd place. and looking like they could potentially take the lead of this race. Herbert Froschel and Judah Savalainen. Savalainen going all over the curves at Ascari, not upsetting that car. Could that potentially be another change with the 1.8 update? More ability to use some of the curves, even though the AMG really never cared anyway.
And Savalainen taking advantage of the grunt that Mercedes have. A lot of drivers have said that the new Evo Merc, or not really new anymore, but the Evo Merc has definitely had some improvements with the physics changes. It was a car that a few people kind of took to, but a lot of people still preferred the old Merc and the power that it gave on the straights. It does seem now like the Evo has come into its own a bit, but look at the pace of the Honda on the straights. Herbert Froschel out-dragging that Mercedes right towards the end of the braking zone and managing to stay ahead. It is going to be challenging for Jonas Savalainen to get past the number 86, but he's got plenty of laps to do so. An hour, 3 minutes and a half left of this race, and that is an hour and 3 minutes and a half left of this race that Christopher Verstappen has to try and find his way through on George Boothby, who, as we know from experience, is not an easy driver to get past.
Yeah, his own teammate had to sit behind him for the better part of 45 minutes to an hour to get one shot to get by him. Y'all remember how that turned out, don't we? But a fantastic race, all things considered. And, well, I talked about the first penalties coming through. Certainly they have. Racing incident between the 108 and the 171. No further action between the 899 and the 72. Racing incident between the 98 and the 17. Racing incident between the 15 and the 8. 5-second penalty for car 51 for modulating brakes and accelerating, causing a 3-wide situation into turn 1. I'm assuming there was contact there, as there is no rule about going 3-wide. I assume he invited contact by doing that. Drive-through penalty for car 68, braking late, taking out the 966.
Oh, some of the penalties start to reel on out. We'll continue watching here. We've got Christopher Verstappen's on board. You can see in the Bentley, which is steering, of course, on the right-hand side of the car rather than the left. And you can see now the Bentley shifts up into 6th gear in the slipstream and closing. Not quite close enough to have any sort of move, but look how the Bentley closes in on the brakes very nicely there. Of course, the Porsche will pull away through the acceleration zones, and you can just see Christopher Verstappen pulls out a bit and goes to the left-hand side of the circuit. There are some bumps on the inside of that corner. Would like to avoid. George Boothby doesn't seem to be too concerned about them as he just drives clean over them. There are a few drivers that are avoiding those bumps, and that is one thing that they will be feeling with the new update as well. Circuit bumps are a lot more noticeable, should we say, around now, and well, some particular circuits like Alton Park, I imagine, are a lot more difficult to drive than they were before. But there's all these things now that the drivers are starting to notice that they probably didn't notice before. It's all these things that they're now taking into their driving styles that they want to try and improve on, and it's making them not only more consistent, but quicker as well. Speaking of quicker, it does look like Christopher Verstappen is getting quicker and is closing in on George Boothby every single corner. Looks like that Bentley is making headway.
Yeah, you're not going to beat that Porsche in the center of the corner, maybe even into or off. But what you can do is beat it down a straightaway and get as close as you like. And on a straightaway is the easiest place to try and make a pass. Verstappen here, as close as he's ever been, erasing more than a second's gap at one point. George Boothby leading. This is off the back of George Boothby's number 75 Porsche, looking back at the front of the 747 Bentley. As they thunder down the front straight, you can see just how much quicker Verstappen is. Will we see a move down into turn 1? Defensive line from Boothby. Actually, no, not a defensive line. Pulls out of the way, goes to the outside, inviting Verstappen in. They're side by side, minor contact, and it's going to be Verstappen. He's through, new leader.
Christopher Verstappen absolutely pinned, did not want to give anything to George Boothby there, stayed on the inside line. George Boothby turned in to try and see if he could force Christopher Verstappen to, close out the steering and take the corner tighter to compromise his exit. Christopher Verstappen, no chance. He knows the weight of that car, he knows the size of that car, and he knows that the Porsche can't outmuscle it through the corner. He knows that he could dictate the racing line on the inside line. and very well done as well. Christopher Verstappen, fastest lap of the race, fastest car on track, now the leader as well. A Bentley leads a Porsche at Monza. We have a McLaren on the podium as well, and a Honda and a Merc filling out the top 5. And keep an eye on Valentin Barrier. He hasn't really gained too much on the drivers here ahead, but he is staying consistent, and who knows, come the pit stops, could maybe gain a couple of seconds. And I say he's not gaining too much, he's gained half a second on Savalainen in a sector, so maybe don't listen to everything I'm saying tonight.
Well, I can tell you the NSN racing team is absolutely ecstatic with that pass, just absolutely out dragging it down the straightaway and giving them no option in the first chicane. And now Christoph Verstappen leads this race and has pulled away. It's going to be more than 3/4 of a second just on one lap. 58 minutes to play, and it's all going to plan for the 747 Bentley. Boothby, though, doing well on his own right. Jardier up to 7th place. Boothby will be paying attention to the cars behind him now. I don't think quickly losing to Tinko or for Shell right now. I think everybody's just kind of holding serve. Speaking of holding serve, maybe don't listen to anything I say either, because that's not what's happening. Rochelle has a little bit of company.
Does have a little bit of company, and this is going to be one of those things, I think, for George Boothby. We know how, he does get himself sometimes distracted, is the word I will use, when he's out there on his own, and he does make a few little mistakes. We haven't seen that so far recently from him. But now he's got a very different challenge ahead of him. He has been passed early on in the race on pace, and now he has to see if he can find anything in the second half to bring back that deficit he has towards the Bentley. And Tico van der Velde, who is just outside of 1 second behind George Boothby. If he's looking at George Boothby as the championship contender, as he should be, and he needs to get some points over him here tonight. You don't want the gap growing. As much as George Boothby might not pick up a win here tonight, don't want the gap between yourself and the championship leader to keep growing, no matter how small it grows, race after race.
Well, they're competitors, Boothby and Jardier. They may be on the same team, and they may have a friendly sort of rivalry, so to speak, but they're still competitors at the end of the day, as Savalainen here thinking about making a move on for Shell, thinks better of it in the Parabolica. But that's the thing about Boothby and Jardier. We saw for 2 weeks in a row how hard they were willing to race each other. We had Boothby in here, we had Jardier in here, and they both said the same thing. There are no team orders. We are racing it out. We had a deal before the season started. We were going to race each other as hard as we possibly could, and they've absolutely done that to the point where they both crashed. And that is the point. That for Jardier, he is going to continue to try and get up this field, get as close to Boothby as possible. And for Boothby, nothing really of value has been lost here. Yes, he's running second. No, it's not max points. Verstappen here going for the win and the fastest lap currently. But for Boothby, he's still got his main rivals, Pinko and Jardier, behind him. So it's all good if you're Boothby. No time to panic, despite the fact that there may be one car that's a little quicker than you. Damage limitation, Ryan.
Yeah, and whilst you were talking about that, our broadcaster Stewie just showing you there how the tyres behave now when the drivers hit some of the curves. And perfect example with Christopher Verstappen's Bentley, how there's almost a new style of driving. The cars do take the curbs better, and just kind of trying to show off the way that Christopher Verstappen is approaching the circuit. And well, it has all closed up behind. We said Tinko van der Velde needed to get a bit of a move on. His championship rival very much still ahead of him, even if not in the lead. Maybe Tinko van der Velde is listening on the stream and has thought to himself, oh yeah, maybe I do need to get a move on, and I'm sure he knows that plenty as well. 0.3 of a second is the gap between those two now as they come into the Parabolica. And speaking of closing the gap, Jonas Savalainen has closed the gap again to Herbert Frechel. Look at Frechel taking the wide line out of the corner, and that's to maximize the straight line speed of that car coming towards the end of the straight. And he's going to need that straight line speed, because look at the exit that the Mercedes has of Jonas Savalainen. But this is where the NSX starts to gain it back, gaining, and the Merc has to tuck back in. And Herbert Frechel, what looked like a pretty unusual line coming out of the corner, has probably saved it right towards the end.
That's a good defensive drive from Frechel there. Herbert knew exactly what he needed to do. He needed to maximize his parabolica on the straightaway just to give him that extra little boost, because the Mercedes is not going to out-drag that Honda. Even with the current VOP, it's just not going to happen. It is the way the car is made, and he knows that. Herbert knows that. Savalainen knows that, and it's a cat and mouse game, but an excellent defensive tactic that turned into an offensive tactic by Herbert Frechel. Mentioned earlier, everybody learning things about their cars, and Judah Savalainen learning where the limit of grip is on the grass there. And once again in the second Lesmo as well, going completely
Valentin
off of the
Barrier is going to be
racetrack.
loving this. Valentin
sure
Barrier is watching this going, yes, exactly what I need to see ahead of me, because that fills you full of confidence. When you see a driver ahead going wide onto the grass, struggling a bit. Oh, as we see Bentley on Bentley. Martin Grady.
Oh, he's not going to stop. He's not going to stop. Oh my goodness.
What? Plebs, as Jesse has named him, not doing a pleb move right there. Fantastic from Martin Grady to save that one and keep the car going, and very close behind Stevenson as well. He's going to have another go into the Parabolica. This time he's on the outside. Is he going to try and go for a cutback on the inside line? Yes, he is. Has a very nice exit indeed, and he will get the move done. Stevenson will tuck in behind to see if he can take it back on the straight. Speak of taking it back on the straight, Jonas Savalainen got the move done on the straight, and now here comes Valentin Barrier into the chicane as well, not using the strength of the Bentley through the chicane to get the move done. He tucks in behind Herbert Frechel, but Jonas Savalainen has finally got the move done on the 86.
Well, he very nearly lost two places that Herbert Frechel was able to claw one of them back because Barrier was by him, but due to the unique way that chicanes work, was able to get back by him and maintain a top 5 position. You talked about Valentin Barrier loving this. What about Jardier? Jardier's right behind Valentin Barrier, and if I spy that correctly, that's João Cavaca in the 33 Ferrari as well. They're all coming together. All of these cars, all the way back to 8th, have a shot at the top 5 right about here. An excellent job by all these drivers. You know, a lot of boxes being checked for me with the 1.8 update. More use of curves to more accurately reflect the real thing. Better suspension, better BOP, and it's all checking the box. And for these drivers, it's music to their ears as well. They get to pick different cars that they like better, go out here and compete at a place like Monza. Oh my goodness, Savalainen, a big twitch. Will that cost him?
We'll have to see if it does. Here we get a bit of a replay here from Stewie. Exactly what happened. Clipped the curb on the anti-cut way too hard on the exit of Ascari. Managed to keep the car stable, and he has held it coming into the Parabolica. Looks like he's had a wider exit as well to try and defend his line. Obviously, he's going to do exactly the same thing that Herbert Frechel did. Now, here comes Valentin Barrier. He's pulled out of the slipstream early to try and get past the likes of Herbert Frechel. Now you can see the power of the Honda kicking in, and this is what Jonas Savalainen was afraid of. When you get to the second part of the straight, the Honda gains its speed, but Herbert Frechel couldn't take advantage of the pace because Valentin Barrier was on the inside line, and he gets the move done. And now Jardier wants a piece of the action too.
Jardier trying to go up the inside, and that's the thing about Valentin Barrier. They showed his move, did Herbert Frechel, that first time through, and on the second time of asking, of course, Barrier was able to place his car a bit more precise, knowing what Herbert would do, and that's got him the place. But what about Jardier trying to go around the outside to the inside, living La Vida Loca, and he's got it done for 6th place. Here's João Cavaca coming up. This is into the first Lesmo, and he's going to be done, and he's lost several spots here now as Herbert Frechel, as that Honda just looks like it's fading a bit.
The best time to strike a driver is when they're down. When you've lost positions, that's the best time to strike at someone. And, well, unfortunately for Herbert Frechel, he had lost a position to Barrier. Then he was under pressure from Jardier, and Jardier made a brilliant block pass move coming on the exit of the second chicane, and that set up the move for João Cavaca. Unfortunately, not much that Frechel could have done about it. Gonna have to try and recompose himself. That car has plenty of straight line speed, and he has to be able to use it. Going to get back past on the straight. Meanwhile, further up front, The fight for second place is still well and truly on. 0.4 of a second splits second and third. George Boothby still ahead of Tinko van der Velde, but I think, Jesse, only a matter of time. Only a matter of time until Tinko van der Velde gets within striking range of that Porsche. And meanwhile, we'll go into a bit of a cinematic view here of Christopher Verstappen's Bentley as he leads by 4.6 seconds over George Boothby. Incredible pace at the moment.
Well, not only is he the fastest car on the racetrack, he's clearly got the fastest lap, and he's pulling away. Like I said, he's doing about, on some laps, he's doing 3/4 of a second a lap. On other laps, it's only a couple of tenths, but even still, the fastest car consistently on every lap. And I know you at home are like, Jesse, of course he's the fastest car. He's leading and has the fastest lap time. But that doesn't always mean that you're the fastest car on the track, especially we saw that with Boothby and Jardier before, where they'll take the lead in the race and they'll change their engine map, save a little bit, and not be the fastest car on the track. Not so here for Christoph Verstappen, who is absolutely dominating this race now. Hard to believe we had 15 or 20 minutes of George Boothby leading this race, and we thought Tinko was going to take the lead, and then all of a sudden Verstappen, out of literally nowhere, catches up to the top two, passes them on subsequent laps, and now has just about a 5-second lead. I said the same thing about Boothby, by the way. I thought that he wasn't losing time to van der Velde earlier, and as soon as I said that, of course, van der Velde turned up the wick and erased half a second of that gap all over the back of him. What has happened here to this group? We saw the passes earlier. Savalainen, oh! That's a big one, and that took out Jardier into Ascari as well.
Yeah, Jardier not going to be happy about that one, and there's going to be doing investigations of that as well. His position not quite updated yet. Not too sure, Jesse Lee, as we see Mikael Sundstrom now catching up to Jardier. We're going to see here, this is Jardier's perspective. And just goes into the back of him.
Now that looks so awkward. Was that some sort of connectivity issue?
It doesn't look like a normal car-to-car contact, does it?
Yeah. I wonder if that's a connectivity issue, and the stewards will know that. They have a way to figure out if that was a probability in that instance, and certainly that is something that they will be aware of, but it doesn't matter either way. Jardier's car is damaged now, certainly from that, and set them back quite a ways. And in fact, that's Martin Lawrence, who's in 11th place, who is now threatening to take that 10th place away from Jardier. And of course, Jardier not happy about that at all, nor should he be, but that accident just looked strange.
It did look very strange, but I suppose it's up to the stewards to decide what they see in that. I mean, it's definitely obvious to us, Jesse, that Jonas Savalainen was late on the brakes. There's no doubt about that. He was later on the brakes than Jardier, or if he wasn't later on the brakes, he definitely braked less than Jardier did, and it does seem like Jardier is losing quite a bit of pace. I imagine there's a fair bit of damage on the back end of that car. He's just been passed by Martin Lawrence in a 171. And yeah, you can see the damage on the back of that car as well coming out of Ascari, so that is not great for Jardier. Ideally, you pit at this point in time, you repair the damage, and you go back out and see what you can salvage, but this will not do his championship hunt any good, because at the moment, he's outside of the top 10, and if he comes in to repair that damage, which it looks like he probably is going to do right about now, it's going to put him even further down the order.
It sure is. It'll be little solace for Jardier and his team, but the initial stewarding findings is it did look strange to them as well, as if it were lag. Now, that doesn't absolve you of any wrongdoing, of course, but I know the 100 Savalainen is no longer taking part in the race. The garage door is down.
Yeah, it's a shame. We have seen quite a few drivers park it already. I think we've lost at least 5 cars from the race as Jauke Vacker and Valentin Barrier come together. Second part of the Seconda Variante chicane. Valentin Barrier doing everything he can to maintain that 4th place at the moment. Finds himself about 5.5 seconds off of third, but he wants to keep himself in front of that Ferrari. And Giancarlo, despite the fact that a lot of drivers have told us the Ferrari has lost pace and it's lost drivability, Giancarlo seems to still be throwing that car around through the corners nicely.
There's a couple of drivers I would never want to have to pass in earnest. Valentin Berrier is one of those cars. And Joao Kavaca, of course, we heard a lot about the Ferrari. And they have lost a little bit of pace, a little bit of drive. But like you said, it seemed to affect it at all. But Valentin Berrier with a lot of defensive driving, I would say he's one of the greats when it comes to defensive driving. And he's showing it today once again, while he's known for that, certainly.
And if Herbert Frichel's day hasn't got any worse yet, he's got another Bentley in his mirrors now. He had Verstappen in his mirrors at the start of the race. He had Valentin Berrier get past him next, and now he's got Martin Grady or Tidge closing down in on him. You can see the yellow Bentley there as we look at Giancarlo and Valentin Berrier, and even in behind that, there's Will Stevenson, who could still close down on the likes of Herbert Frichel. If you're a Honda supporter, a Bentley is not the car you want to see behind you at this point in time, because it looks to me, Jesse, that between Verstappen, Berrier, and even Martin
Yeah, I think you're right, Ryan. I think that is the case, and I wouldn't want to see the Bentley behind me regardless. It's a very intimidating car, but I think maybe right now something's going on with Frichel's car. I think it was good for the first 20 minutes of the race or so, and now all of a sudden something has happened. I think you could say the same thing about Boothby's Porsche. We've always known that the Porsche is very sensitive to how much weight and load it has on it, and that includes the fuel load as well. And I'm not sure if this update has made that more temperamental, or perhaps Boothby set up the car to be a bit more quick on the front end of the run. And again, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. It's possible that these guys and gals don't have any data on what the cars do in long runs now. They've only had a few days. It's very possible that they spent all their time getting their eye in, getting their setups back together, because using a setup from just a few days ago might not work as effectively, so they've had to completely go back to the drawing board.
And we see Martin Grady now trying to, well no, he's coming into the pit lane, that's why he took the tight inside line. So there we go, the 18 into the pit lane. Going to get that stop done and dusted, and wow, this is probably the closest Tinko van der Velde has been all day to George Boothby's Porsche, and not quite being close enough to put his nose down the inside and try for a move. And the thing is, what's often difficult sometimes with drivers like George Boothby, who are so talented, is that once they've been passed once in a certain way, they don't want to be passed again, and definitely not in the same way. And if Tinko van der Velde is going to try and do the exact same move that Christopher Verstappen pulled off a while ago, well, George Boothby is fully aware of that. He will cover that line off next time around, so he could be making it a lot more difficult for Tinko van der Velde. But Tinko's no stranger to trying to get past difficult drivers. He's got plenty of experience in the SRO Esports series. He drives for, obviously, for Sidemax Motorworks in the GT World Challenge America Endurance series, so he's got plenty of experience, not just driving this car, but also getting past difficult drivers. So he's just going to bide his time, wait for the right opportunity. And that is almost what it is sometimes, isn't it, Jesse Lee? It's playing the waiting game. You know, like a predator does in the wild. Wait for the perfect moment to ambush your prey.
Well, Tinko is getting a reputation for doing this, just sitting behind, because he always qualifies somewhere in the top 4 or 5. And the initial start, you try to get as much as you can. Tinko was unfortunate enough to not get a whole lot. Boothby kind of drove away, but once the race settles in, it's not uncommon for us here at RCI to see Tinko just follow the car, not do anything crazy, doesn't want to get in trouble with the stewards, doesn't want to damage the car, doesn't want to race anybody they don't have to. Tinko's always been like that. He wants the guy in front to make a mistake. Fortunately for him, the guy in front is George Boothby, and doesn't usually make mistakes, we'll put it that way.
No, he doesn't, but we've said that about a couple of drivers so far in recent times.
That's
I mean,
a good point.
Phil Vitt said Wolf Matuszka doesn't make mistakes, so then Wolf Matuszka ended up in the barrier that race, so we're going to take
that was
everything we say
Ryan
with a
Gill
pinch of
saying that,
salt.
Wolf. That was Ryan Gill saying that.
We've got to take everything with a pinch of salt at this point, and here comes Jan Kabaka up behind the likes of Valentin Barrier. Still plenty of straight line speed in that Ferrari, and Herbert Fischel hasn't dropped off the pace here. Sticking with these guys, so he's obviously regained his composure. Really got anyone to worry about behind him at the moment. Martin Grady has come into the pit lane. The one thing Martin Grady is planning now is he's got clear air. He's got 17.5 seconds in front of him. No one to bother him. And he's just going to start setting lap times and hoping that these three, you know, that are together start holding each other up when it comes to the pit stops. Can be ahead of all three of them. He'll be out there in clear air, not getting held up, setting some pretty optimal lap times. And look at the slide from Chalkavaka through the first part of a Ferrari. That was phenomenal. We'll see it on the replay here again. Watch the wheel. Whoa! Nicely done.
Italians, not necessarily known for drifting, but the Italian stallions can, in fact, drift around a corner.
Oh, there goes Herbert
against
Fischel.
doing that in the Ascari. Yes, and Fischel going around and trying to hold off that position. It's going to be a drag race, Ferrari versus Honda here. Who has it? I would expect the Honda to come back here, and there it is, just edging out in front, but Kavaka has the inside line, and I wonder if that's going to be all she wrote when they get down to there. Oh, that's a braking zone, and an excellent job by Herbert Fischel to slam the brakes on.
Did it seem like to you that Jan Kavaka backed out of that really early?
He did break way earlier than he should have.
Very
like
surprised Jan Kavaka didn't go for that one. I mean, maybe didn't think he could outmuscle the Honda through the corners, but I don't know. That was pretty strange. But Jan Kavaka deciding to live to fight another day rather than risk it into turn one. I'm sure the stewards would appreciate that, as they have caught up with all the relevant incidents now, I've been told. So all the penalties that have come out through the race are currently applied to the guilty drivers and have reached the halfway point of the race. As you look at your race leader, Christopher Verstappen, the Belgian in the Bentley, who took the lead not too long after the race started from George Boothby and has kept the lead ever since, has a 7.5 second gap over George Boothby. And when you have a 7.5 second gap over George Boothby in, I mean, what are we talking, 15, 20 minutes? You're doing something right.
Well, they're not quite popping the corks yet, Ryan Gill, but they are readying the ice bucket, I can tell you that. Speaking of penalties, racing incident between the 15 and the 98. Warning for car 51 for not braking in a straight line, forcing the 98 off track. No further action between the 727 and the 98. No further action for an incident involving the 98. 5-second penalty for car 17. Tries to make a corner, goes over the curb and makes contact with the 51 and the 15. No further action with the 86 and the 72. Drive-through for car 98 for taking out the 777. Position not returned. Warning for car 98 for additionally slowing down significantly on the racing line. Drive-through penalty for car 68, failing to slow down for an accident in front and taking out the 777. I don't know why everyone hates the 777. No further action between the 86 and the 747. No further action between the 75 and the 747. No further action between the 51 and the 17. Drive-through penalty for car 100 for taking out Jardier in the 39. Most likely due to lag, but the penalty had to come. Warning for car 33 for avoidable contact. That is on the 72. So warning for car 33. And I'm pretty sure the stewards are all caught up, and now you are as well.
We saw Christopher Verstappen come into the pit lane and serve his pit stop as you watch a replay here between Valentin Barrier and João Kavaka. Everything stays as it was there. João Kavaka now into the pit lane and out of the pit lane. Oh, and stop and go 30. And that is for speeding in pit lane, Jesse Lee. And while we're on the topic of speeding in pit lane, a rather interesting quirk about the way ACC's pit lane used to work has apparently been patched out now, and I wonder if that is going to catch out a couple of drivers in the way that you could brake really late previously for the pit lane line, and as long as you were in the right gear, and had the pit limiter enabled, you could be slightly over the limit, and the game would not penalize you for it because it recognized that the pit limiter is on and you are in first gear, which is the only gear the pit limiter can be used in. So that apparently I've been told has been patched out. I wonder, I mean, we do still see speeding in pit lane regardless. Whilst that little exploit or quirk, whatever you want to call it, still existed, we did still see speeding in pit lane. But I wonder if some of the drivers that are maybe a bit used to taking those extreme risks of coming into the pit lane as quick as possible, possibly be caught out by that now.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of drivers that will go through the patch notes, and whoo boy, were they a lot of patch notes the other day. It's possible you missed it. It's possible that it wasn't something that came up at any given point. And of course, some drivers just prefer to learn the hard way sometimes. So there's also that. You hate to see that happen. But what about Verstappen here, who is out of the pit lane? But of course, now no longer the leader of the cars that have pitted, I don't think.
No, he isn't. Rather unusually, he has come out behind Will Stevenson, and Ismail Lebrec had mentioned that it was a weird timing for a pit stop from Verstappen. Might have been running on a lower fuel load than those around him. That could explain his pace, and in fact, his pit stop is a lot longer than those around him as well. 1 minute 10 seconds for Christopher Verstappen's pit stop. William Stevenson, the driver right in front of him, 47 seconds for their pit in to pit out. So it definitely does seem like Christopher Verstappen has gone for a different strategy, and judging by the fact that that's about 20 seconds difference in pit stop time, I'm thinking that's tyres.
Yeah, I think you've nailed it. We had Redford in chat ask about would anybody chance it taking tires or is going to be fuel only. The requirement for the pit stop, folks, is as normal. 1 liter of fuel, no tires required to satisfy the pit requirement. But some drivers will elect to do that. I'm curious if Boothby will elect to do that. I feel like that's what's ailing the 75 Porsche. And I think some of the other drivers are doing it as well. I think you nailed it with Verstappen. I think they were on a lighter fuel load. As coming through is the 747. Stevenson didn't even have a chance in the Parabolica. Changed for 12th place. And a new leader of the cars that have pitted, Christoph Verstappen, getting it done. But will Stevenson have something to say about this? You never know. This could be for the lead at some point, but it doesn't look like it's going to happen. Verstappen back out in front of the cars that have pitted, with just about 11 of them up front, still yet to pit.
I think Christopher Verstappen might have been a bit concerned about the slide that Stevenson had for Parabolica there, but got the job done nonetheless. And the one thing I think now, Jesse Lee, is that, you know, Christopher Verstappen has taken tyres. I mean, we pretty much agree on that, right? He's got to get a move on now. He can't afford to be held up. He has to get a move on, because I don't think George Boothby is going to take tyres. I don't think Tinko van der Velde is going to take tyres, unless I'm completely wrong on that. And the strategy, or the better strategy, is to take tyres here today. And I think that's why Christopher Verstappen maybe was so aggressive to try and build that gap between himself and George Boothby, because he's thinking, if I have to pit, or if I'm going to pit and take tyres, and George Boothby isn't, I need to build up a buffer to gain all the time that I'm losing. And, well, he was in the lead by 7.5 seconds. He needs a lot more than that to overturn a tyre swap. But the big question is, will George Boothby or Tinko van der Velde take a tyre swap? We don't know. Will Valentin Barrier or Herb Shell take a tyre swap? We also don't know. A lot of question marks up in the air at the moment. The one thing we do know, Christopher Verstappen doesn't lead the race anymore, and it is game on for the lead of the race, because if George Boothby doesn't take tyres, we will have a new race leader.
Yeah, but I think we're thinking about this a little bit wrong. If I'm George Boothby, I'm leading this championship, and I know Boothby loves to win cups, so he's going to try and win this championship. He will have already known, somebody in his chat would have told him that Jardier got taken out earlier in the race. He knows he's in front of Tinko. He will know that Tinko's third in the championship, and I think his fight is with Tinko behind him, and he'll try to be outfoxing him. Now, it may get him the win by proxy, but you just never know. I don't know if I'm fighting Verstappen at this point, knowing how fast he was, and even if he changed tires, he's likely, based on when he changed tires, to get all of that time back, especially considering he has clear running in front of him. You know he was the fastest car on the track right now. I'm George Boothby. I'm looking in the mirror so much as I am looking out the windscreen because simply the guys I have to beat are all behind me. I don't care about Verstappen right now. Now, if Verstappen wins this race in 1 week's time, it may be a completely different story.
Yeah, Verstappen isn't in the title hunt yet. He's ninth in the championship. He's on 80 points. He's a good 111 points behind George Boothby. But, you know, if he wins here today, he closes that gap slightly. And depending on if George Boothby loses out on second place, and who knows, anything can happen. Maybe he loses a few more places than that, like Jardia has today. Anything can go wrong. You know, maybe that does bring Christopher Verstappen into the title hunt all of a sudden, and things get really interesting. So it's definitely something for George Boothby to keep an eye on. I think he is playing, like you said, the long game, thinking about the season, thinking about the fact that, okay, as long as I keep Tinko and Jardia behind me, keeping Jardia behind him seems like it's pretty much 100% done at this point, is something that George Boothby is aware of, and it is something that I think he will be focusing on. Jardia at the moment down in 17th place. Of course, there are still drivers that have to pit, but it's not looking good for the 39 at this point in time. And, well, it has been a bit of a different day, hasn't it, for the Yaz Heat cars. We've got Jardia having a very, very tough race and really having a bit of a race of attrition. And then we've got George Boothby under pressure from Tinko van der Velde. And he hasn't really been under pressure from Tinko van der Velde for this long throughout any of the races so far this season.
Yeah, it's been very close between those two. Ishmael Lebrec, by the way, from chat, posted something that caught my eye. Been spying on the Yaz Heat cars. Ishmael Lebrec saying, can confirm that neither Boothby or Tinko will take tires. They've been fuel saving for nearly 25 minutes. Boothby has been fuel saving for 25 minutes, and thinking Tinko is doing the same and saving in the slipstream. Cat and mouse, exactly as I predicted, though, that his fight was the car behind him, not necessarily the one in front. But again, this could end up meaning that Boothby and Tinko get in front of Verstappen, who is clearly on the opposite strategy. But Ishmael Lebrec there doing a little spying for us here.
Well, it's always interesting to keep an eye on what some of the other drivers are doing, and that's what happens when some of these top drivers do stream their perspective. You can have a little bit of a nosy, see what's going on around, see what their strategy is. Here is Martin Grady. He's also streaming, by the way, if you didn't know, Tidge. And he's currently chasing down at Stevenson, and he'd got past Stevenson, so Stevenson's obviously done better in the pit stops than the likes of Martin Grady. And Martin Grady, yeah, 7 seconds slower, 7.5 seconds slower than William Stevenson in the pit stops. So that's where all that time got made up by the 108. So it's now time for Martin Grady to get past the 108 all over again. And Bentley on Bentley for the second time at this race. And this is not the manufacturer I expected to be coming out here and really putting on a show today, Jesse.
No, not really. I feel bad for Tidge. Tidge was the first car on pit lane that didn't have damage. Jardier came in first, of course, with the rear end damage, but Grady came in as soon as he had caught the group that he was fighting with, and I thought that undercut was a brilliant idea. He must have as well, but it just hasn't quite worked out that way, and now has a fight with Stevenson here for what will not be 13th place by the end. Oh, a big slide by Stevenson. Is this all Martin Grady needs? I think it might be, covering the inside. And here comes Grady up the outside. The race to Ascari. Who breaks later? Dare you go too wide through Ascari, Ryan? Oh!
Grady going to be on the outside line. It'll turn into the inside line of Ascari, and he gets the job done midway through the corner.
Brave.
Doesn't go onto the outside William Stevenson as much as I thought it would. But yeah, good move there from Martin Grady. Held it on the outside line. Brave to do so and ride the curves. But yep, we're not done yet. And look how the 108 is on the brakes and goes for the block pass as well. Out of the final corner. The MotoGP style move if I've ever seen one, and well done, William Stevenson. Fantastic
Great.
racing between the
The
Bentleys, but
rebuttal.
Martin Brady's going to return the favor here, I feel, down towards turn one.
We call that a slide job in America. William Stevenson with the slide job into, oh my goodness, and maybe a little bit of payback here into turn one. They're side by side in the first chicane. I don't think they touched, but they got very close. They're still side by side, and now they finally sorted out single file. They may have sorted out single file, but I don't think they've sorted out a single thing thus far. Right onto the back of the Stevenson car is Martin Grady. Grady going around the outside. He did it once. Can he do it again? He's going to have to be really late on the brakes to make this work. He cannot. Falls back single file as they drive into the Lesmos.
Fantastic racing between Stevenson and Martin Grady here. I said the Bentleys were putting on a show. I was not wrong out here today, and my word, have these
Absolutely
two not disappointed so far today. I'm sure Kids fans are absolutely loving this on a dive. So I'm sure he's loving it as well. And
look at what happens here. Oh, gets a little loose.
Nice correction there, but yeah, absolutely fantastic. And this is what we want to see, isn't it, Jussie? Week in, week out, we want to see the best drivers going toe-to-toe around some of the best tracks in world. And, well, this fits the bill right here. And we have Herbert Frechelle closing back in on the likes of Valentin Barrier. Of course, Joe Kavaka is out of the picture after his 30-second stop-go penalty that he picked up for speeding in the pit lane. Herbert Frechelle will take that freebie every day of the week. And this is a provisional, well, battle for provisional third at this stage in the race. Valentin Barrier and Herbert Frechelle, and Mikhail Sundstrom at 6.4 seconds behind these guys. Looking at the lap times, don't really think he's closing in too much on them. It looks like a bit of an isolated battle between these two at the moment.
Well, like you said, it could be very important depending on where Verstappen and the like come out. This could be for third place, so you never really know. Got to race for each position like it means something, and of course they all do mean something. Doesn't matter if it's 17th or first, they all mean something, and these two have been very close indeed. Speaking of very close, George Boothby and Tico van der Velde have been in just about this configuration for about an hour. Who's going to blink first? Who comes down pit lane? I think Ishmael's onto something. Normally I would say, well, Tico should come down pit lane. He should try and undercut Boothby. But they're on the same strategy, I think, and I don't think that matters here. I think they know they're going to be racing each other anyway. It doesn't matter what they do. And coming in a lap early may be detrimental in the long run. And it's just, you just don't know. So you err on the side of caution, and you go with your plan A. I still think both these drivers are on their plan A. George Boothby only has a plan A, so I know he is, and he's executing his to full effect. So you have that going on up front. You have this going on for what is effectively 12th. Will be a top 10 place after pit stops have finished. But Stevenson, Grady, I think this is round 4 or 5 for them. Do we see a move into the Parabolica this time? No, we do not. Following Linus third is Tidge.
I was going to say, if there's any car you want to slipstream off in this race, it's a Bentley. They are absolutely mega on the straights at the moment. Like a tow missile being behind one of these things. And here comes Martin Grady as well. He's going to be going to the outside line this time around, down towards the first corner. You can see him gaining slightly. Is he going to be later on the brakes? They brake around the same time. Doesn't change too much. Martin Grady tucks back in behind. Is he going to try get a better exit out of the first chicane? Looks like they hold station, but he's going to use that slipstream yet again. He's going to see if he can use the power of the Bentley. He takes the inside line of turn 2, but as we come down towards the Seconda Variante chicane, he will be on the outside line. He has to brake later. He has to hold it on the outside if he wants to do it. He tries to do so. And there's a bit of contact between himself and William Stevenson. Martin Grady gains the place, and he's going to give it back. Doesn't want to gain the place off track. Wants to gain it on merit, and very well done so to Martin Grady! As the provisional race lead battle has heated up. Tico van der Velde, probably the closest he's come to taking the lead all day.
I don't know if he was trying to do this. I know he pulled out the lap prior, but taking the inside was Boothby defensively, and then a little bit of a touch between the two of them. It's hard to tell who instigated that. I don't think it matters anyway, as they all cycle out in the original way that they were. Talking about Grady for a second, Grady gave that position back, and I think under the current RCI stewarding system, I don't think they're going to care too much. That was hard racing that led to maybe a little bit of contact. Position was given back. It didn't affect anybody else. And meanwhile, they're still going at it. Down the outside, trying to get it done. A slide there by Stevenson, looking to the inside, sniffing, trying to find enough tarmac. Can't do it out of the parabolica. And they're going to continue. Stevenson and Grady drag race down the straightaway. Who had the better pull? I don't think it was Stevenson. I think Grady has it. Grady going off the track here. You can use this. Mind the pit out here. Nobody there anyway. Trying to get as close as possible. Letting him know he's there. Runs into the grass. Has to get back on the track. Looks around the outside. Can't do it. Gives up on it on this occasion. No! Stevenson misses the chicane. Stevenson misses the chicane. Grady takes the chicane. And Stevenson gained a little bit. Now, how do you score that now? As that absolutely gave Stevenson a tiny bit of an advantage right there.
Stewards will be looking at that one, and they are definitely going to see. There's William Stevenson. I think he is going to slow down a bit now. He has slowed down towards. Braked a bit earlier for the second chicane. I wonder if that was done in thinking that he would have to give that time back. And here it is for the lead of the race. Tinker van der Velde tried this on the previous lap. He wasn't quite alongside enough to try and work his way around the outside. He will have the outside this time. It turns into the outside, and he takes it from George Boothby. Just
George Boothby would not want to do that. If he was trying to let Tinko by or didn't care, he wouldn't have defended as hard. And he's aggressive now as George Boothby trying to get this place back. This could be for the win. It could be for second. It wouldn't matter if it's for last. These are two drivers who have raced their entire race together here. They've been nose to tail in subsequent weeks, and they're racing each other incredibly hard. They're both fuel saving, but they're both racing hard indeed. And look at this. It's not over yet. Side by side again around the outside of the parabolica. No sliding over this time as Stevenson. Grady sliding on the outside, trying to get the grip as they go nose to tail again. Closer this time is Grady. Drag race down the front straight.
Martin Grady was wider on the exit. He should have the better top end towards the straight. He also has the benefit of the slipstream as well. He's going to be on the outside line. And these are two of the biggest cars on the grid as well. You're trying to make them fit for a single corner. Stevenson goes deep again, and Grady switches to the outside line. And by doing so, manages to nudge himself ahead. But it is now going to be a drag race all the way down to the second chicane. But Martin Grady seems to have the better initial pull than the 108. Will Stevenson will switch in to the slipstream. Now he's going to try and have a look on the outside line. Will he be able to do so? No. Martin Grady puts the car right where it needs to be, and the move is finally done.
Exhale, everybody. I knew we thought we'd see some contact there. We didn't see some contact. A couple of excellent moves by Stevenson. Desperation maybe setting in. And inevitably, Martin Grady, king of the plebs, I call him Tidge, getting the job done, but only just. William Stevenson, welcome to Pro Class, and an excellent battle there with Martin Grady. That will forever live in the annals of history here on RCI TV. That battle took 7-8 laps. Whoa. And they were side by side. Speaking of side by side, sideways was Max Payne. Max Payne, who was dead last in this race on lap 1, gets into the dirty line here, slides under braking, gets it back together. We've seen a lot of that, Ryan, haven't we, today, with cars sliding, being able to catch it. It's a good sign.
It is a good sign. It is easier to catch those slides now, but the reason you're seeing a lot more of those slides today than you would have previously is, overdriving the car now really, really does punish the tires around, a lot of these circuits. It was something that was mentioned to us, is that you have to be a lot more careful. If you have a smoother driving style and you're a lot more careful on your inputs, it will reward you. And I wonder if that's just something that a few drivers struggling to get to terms with, and that's why we're seeing so many of these slides through the corners. But it is good that they can catch them much easier now. Of course, it is going to allow people to stay in the race a bit more. Here we're looking at a race replay. is on board with George Boothby through the first chicane. And, well, George Boothby managed to defend on that time around from Tinko van der Velde, but he did lose the position in the end. Now Tinko van der Velde has really put his foot down as well. 1.1 seconds is the lead that he has on George Boothby now. And this, well, this could be significant for the championship. Is this the turning point, Jesse? I mean, 2 rounds into the championship, you know, you had Porsche winning both races, one for Jardier, one for George Boothby, and you know, I think there was a consensus saying, man, this could be a Yaz Heat teammate battle all the way to the end of the season. And all of a sudden, Brands Hatch comes along, Nico van der Velde throws his hat into the ring, and now we're at Monza, where Christopher Verstappen, we don't entirely know where he's going to be come the end of this. I mean, judging by what I can see, I don't think he's going to come out in the lead of the race, and all of a sudden it looks like Tinko van der Velde could be going into round 5 right on the back of George Boothby points-wise.
Yeah, I think that looks like a likely case. Of course, they still got the stop to do. There's still 13 and a half minutes of this race. But yeah, it's very possible that it could end up that way. Don't count out to Verstappen, though, by the way. Herbert Verschell in his 86 Honda is pitted. He actually came out in front of Verstappen as well. These were all cars that were fighting for top 5 spots. Verstappen right on the back of Verschell now. Of course, job number 1 for Christoph Verstappen, get by Herbert Verschell. And I think he's going to have to do that with Boothby and Tinko van der Velde. I think, because I've been doing the maths, as you might expect, I think they're going to be a little close together here at the end of the race. But if I know anything about Boothby, he's going to pit at the last possible opportunity here. So Verstappen might not have a say in trying to get around Boothby here at the end of the race, because there just might not be any time left.
Now we'll have to see how it all pans out, but Tinko van der Velde now leads. You're looking back at Christopher Verstappen for Herbert Verschell's Honda, and Herbert Verschell will be thinking, oh no, not again. He's seen this Bentley get past him once today, and probably didn't want to see it get past him again, and he's going to do everything in his power to prevent him from doing so. Look at the Bentley on the brakes into Parabolica. Verstappen, unbelievable on the brakes, and now he's going to be right in the slipstream of the Honda. Rochelle didn't take a wide line on the exit, and now you can start to see the Bentley's benefiting now, getting closer, 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 closer. Is he going to go for the move? Is he going to try and go onto the inside line? And he's late on the brakes. He's later on the brakes, and there's contact. And both of them cut the chicane. I think Rochelle cut the chicane out of necessity due to Verstappen's positioning of the car, and they hold station. Is to think what the stewards think about that, but situation, maybe they'll just let it go.
Well, as former steward Fabian Schmidberger would say, all the time you have to leave the space, and I think that there was no space left there. But it'd be interesting to see, like you said, how the stewards feel about that in particular, as several other cars have come to pit lane. Barzaghi and Sundstrom have come down pit lane and now cycle out. Third and fourth of the drivers that have pitted. Barzaghi actually came out just in front of Martin Grady for the final spot inside the top 10. Max Payne will have to come down pit lane as well. I reckon he will drop out of the top 10. Meanwhile, Verstappen tried to go around the outside of Ascari. We see this work earlier in the day. Doesn't work on this particular occasion, as Herbert Verschell has found a way to make that Honda very defensive, and has had to do this race on several occasions, defending his top 5 position.
Well, here comes Christopher Verstappen again. See, the benefit Verstappen has, he changed tyres. He has fresher tyres. The NSX did not change tyres, so obviously he's currently on tyres that are 65 minutes old. Verstappen has the fresher rubber, and that's going to benefit him in this late stage of the race. Here we have Martin Grady, who's trying to get past Barzaghi, and this is a battle for the top 10 as it stands right now. And whoa, late on the brakes again, Verstappen, and he misses the corner entirely, goes through the maze, and will now have to give up the time gained Well, the stewards will be paying him a visit, and he is giving up the time gained here. He's going to have to slot in behind the likes of Herbert Frischel and just waits a while into the corner to let it go, and then tucks in well behind. There's one thing we can say, Jesse Lee, without doubt. Christopher Verstappen is confident in the brakes of those cars. Well, as we look back to Martin Grady, still trying to put the pressure on Dario Bazaghi. Bazaghi looking for a top 10 finish here in the number 8 Audi. Grady is going to make that very, very difficult on him. Going to have a look on the outside line coming into the first of 2 Lesmos, but nothing doing there. Bazaghi goes very, very wide on the exit, though. That will allow Martin Grady to close in slightly, and as we come on the exit of the second Lesmo, Martin Grady just trying to use the straight line speed of that Bentley as much as he can. Now he's going to be on the outside line as we come down towards Ascari. Is he going to outdrag the Audi down the straight? No, it seems like the R8 does have the pace again to get into the corner ahead, and they are remaining as status quo.
Very close racing here. How come every time it's a Bentley, right? And speaking of case and point, another Bentley. This is Verstappen and Frischel trying to be the leaders on the road of the cars that have pitted to give themselves a shot at a podium, maybe a win here today. The Honda out dragging the Bentley, but the Bentley still maintaining the inside. Will Verstappen have it on this particular drive? A little bit loose on the inside is the Honda, and Frischel's going to give up the place, most of the place. He's going to slide over, try to shade the Honda over. Frischel is going to be in behind now. It looks like Verstappen's got it done. That good enough for 4th place right now. That could be a podium here at the end of the race. How close will Christoph Verstappen be to the leaders here at the end of the race? We know Verstappen took tires. We know Tinko and George were not fuel saving for the past 10-15 minutes. They were racing. Meanwhile, Martin Grady continuing to try and get by the Audi to no avail in turn 1. But it's not over yet. Drag race down the front straightaway. And, excuse me, not the front straightaway. Excuse me, the short shoot between the Seconda Variante. And getting that pass done. Here is the leaders of the race. Tinko's in. And George Boothby's in.
So both the race leaders pitting at the same time. So going to find out exactly how their pit stops go, and well, they should, in theory, if they have the same pit stop time, come out in the same order. We'll have to see. There is Tinko van der Velde rolling again, and he is going to be ahead of George Boothby. George Boothby's car's dropped, and there he goes. So gap remain pretty much the same between the two, but it is Tinko van der Velde that is leading, and as he comes out, Valentin Barrier is still going around, but he has to pit. So we know Valentin Barrier is the provisional leader, but he is not the leader. When all the pit stops are said and done, that is going to be Tinko van der Velde, by the looks of it. Christopher Verstappen coming now. He is just coming into the first corner now, so finds himself a bit back from the likes of George Boothby and Tinko van der Velde, so definitely not on for a win as we figured earlier on, but still on for a podium here in the Bentley. It all depends on where Valentin Barrier comes out when he finishes his pits.
A couple of excellent pit stops from Tinko van der Velde and George Boothby there, and van der Velde now guarding him out just a little bit to George Boothby, and Verstappen in 4th place. Keep in mind, he's going to get an extra point here for fastest lap. That is, of course, unless somebody else takes that away from him here at the end of the race. I don't think Verstappen is that far back. I think I'm going to default back to what I said earlier. I think that
well, you're about to find out, Jesse.
Tinko left, yeah, I think because Tinko and Boothby left that late, I think that took any sort of fight Verstappen would have with him out of it, because now van der Velde and Boothby not fighting each other and also not fighting traffic, as Valentin Barrier surrenders the lead of the race and comes down pit lane in the 72. That will hand the lead over to van der Velde, Boothby, and Verstappen will shortly come through. Verstappen 10 seconds behind Boothby for the 2nd place position and only 5 minutes to play. I'm afraid the strategy with tires is just going to be a day late, $1 short.
Here comes Valentin Barrier. Just about to hit the pit exit line, and he does so, and he'll get his car up to speed. Here is Christopher Verstappen coming all the way down the long pit straight here, and he's going to be closing that gap ever so much as he gets towards the braking zone, and it is into turn 1 for Valentin Barrier, and into turn 1 for Christopher Verstappen. So that is the gap. See it there, visibly on screen, 4.5 minutes. To make up that time. I think it's going to be too much for Christopher Verstappen, but the pace I've seen from him today, I think I'd put anything out of the window here today.
Well, you certainly can't. You still got to make the laps, don't you? About 3 more laps from this point. But let's give credit to Tico van der Velde. Excellent driving, excellent strategy, and just ended up having just a little bit more than Boothby. But what of Boothby? Just about 2 3/4 seconds back now. Could Boothby get back up there and challenge late? How many times have we seen the late resurgence of George Boothby where he sat there and he fuel saved, he saved his tires all race long, and then at the final moment
Tinko's made a
had a
mistake.
little something extra.
Tinko
van der Velde has had an accident.
Tinko made a slight mistake coming in for Ascari. You'll see it here. I think he was just a bit caught out on the entry of Ascari. You'll see it here. There you go. Little squiggle, and then car didn't go in trouble, and just managed to keep the car in line, and that is it. That's how quickly you can go from race win to out of the race and in the gravel. And Tinko van der Velde had that win he's currently got on the cards flash before his eyes.
Oh boy, Tinko needs this win. Of course, we came in 195 points for Boothby, 166 for Tinko. Tinko won last week, but only has 2 podiums. Now, only having 2 podiums sounds not so great. You know, it's like, well, of course, he finished 2 out of 3 times on the podium. Well, that is great, but the people you're racing against have not failed to finish on the podium. That, of course, until today. It doesn't look like Jardier is going to do that. Looks like George Boothby is going to go a perfect 4 for 4 to start the season. But if Tinko wins here and gets a handful more points than Boothby, it is going to close that fight way up, and I think even with the spread, van der Velde would go to 2nd in the championship for next week.
Yes, Lee. I said I didn't think Christopher Verstappen could close down the gap he needed to Valentin Barrier in the next 6.5 minutes. He's closed down a second. Ready. He's got 1.3 seconds between himself and Valentin Barrier. That's on the previous relative. It looks closer than that now, as we're just hanging on to the splitter here of Christopher Verstappen. This move might be on for the podium here. The tyre strategy, whilst it won't work for the win, it could still deliver a podium for the 747 here today. And Valentin Barrier on those tyres that have done the whole race is going to be under immense pressure now for the next 1.5 minutes to defend this lead. Final lap of the race coming up.
Well, I said earlier, there's a few drivers in this race I wouldn't want to have to overtake because they're so good at defending. Valentin Barrier is one of those, and he will be defending his podium as if his life depended on it. Verstappen, though, with new tires, will it matter? We've seen Verstappen go around the outside today trying to make moves. Will he do it again? Very defensive line. Valentin Barrier letting everybody know what his intentions are down the front straightaway. I'm going to go defensive. You're not going to pass me on the inside, and if you do, you're going to have to go to the grass. Around the outside, Verstappen trying to get it done. The last lap of the race. You have to make it happen here. There's contact and a huge crash. Valentin Barrier contact with Verstappen. Verstappen's off. Hard contact with the Armco in the middle of the chicane. Let's see what happened.
Just seeing this on the braking, Christopher Verstappen's car moves over slightly. He kept the steering straight though. That's going to be one of the important things that the stewards look at in the review. He kept the steering straight. We've talked about the physics changes. The cars, the brakes are so much stronger on these cars now than they were previously. And when you have those heavy braking zones, they do squiggle when they go into those hard braking areas. And that was just an example of what we saw. We didn't see it from Valentin Barrier's perspective either. It'd be interesting to know if it was the exact same thing for him. But either way, this man right here in the McLaren, he has had to work for it here today. Had to get past George Boothby made it work, lined up a dummy, didn't quite get it off, lined up a second go and made it stick. And it has been the ideal race for Tinko van der Velde, got the move done, and he's going to get the win done in style here at Monza.
It's been a brilliant race. We came into this championship talking about Boothby, talking about Jardier. Tinko van der Velde will be saying, who is Boothby and Jardier? Tinko van der Velde, back-to-back wins in the Friday championship here at RCI. A brilliant run. George Boothby does an excellent job in second place, managing fuel and tires. Third place to Valentin Berrier, and an excellent run as well. Herbert Fischel in fourth, and Verstappen a bittersweet fifth place today with the fastest lap, you have to say. And the rest of the finishers coming across the line: Sundstrom, Lawrence, Brady, Barzaghi, Minnow, Crozen, your top 10.
Absolutely fantastic. And a little bit post-race, Christopher Verstappen comes up to Valentin Berrier, gives him a little bit of a nudge, just be like, "Come
Clearly
on,
thinks
man."
it was his fault there.
Oh, it's gonna be interesting, isn't it? But and yeah, we've got a replay here. Our broadcaster believes that Stevenson is running out of fuel. He is coasting that car.
Oh boy.
And this is not the way the 108 would have wanted his race to end. Look at the throttle. Look at the throttle trace. Not that much. Even under 50%.
He's on safety
input.
car map.
He
Yeah,
is
he's
as
on
well.
safety car map.
He's trying to just crawl that car to the line, and this is what happens when you try to min-max the amount of fuel you have in the car. I think he's realized now that he can get to the end. He's trying to will the car on. It will get to the line.
And there it is. And across the line. Will, I've been there, buddy. I've done that myself a few times.
Oh dear, and Alexander Borodai to finish 15th as well. A few seconds later, Will Stevenson would have dropped into 15th place. That's how close it was. But my word.
What a race.
What a race.
Well, the results being confirmed on your screen: Tinko van der Velde winning the race in the 166 McLaren, George Boothby second in the pole-sitting 75 Porsche, Valentin Berrier in the 72 Bentley, and an excellent run for all of them. And the rest confirmed. Verstappen, again, a top 5 certainly, but a bittersweet one. And what about Jardier coming back to 11th? He was 23rd at one point.
Yeah, Jardier definitely doing a good job to salvage whatever he could from that race. It's not ideal, and for the championship, it's really, really going to hurt him. But, you know, damage limitation, you get races like these sometimes, and who's to say George Boothby and Tinko van der Velde won't have a poor race later on in the season as well? Anything can happen. And, you know, Jardier, he knows that. He's been around long enough to know that you have to keep believing, and you know, he'll move on from this fairly quickly, and he'll be back next week, I'm sure. He'll be back with anger as well.
Yeah, he sure will. Well, folks, it was a very eventful round 4. Luckily, all of our prior planning was unnecessary. Just like yesterday in the GT4 championship, we were able to get the entire race in. Full points for everybody and full marks for anyone who stayed steadfast that we would get this race going. A big thank you to everyone behind the scenes, including race admin Bart Macha and the entire stewarding team for putting together this monumental effort to get everybody on the same page, drivers and stewards and broadcast alike. It's been a very difficult week here for ACC Racing with all of the changes for the drivers and us, of course. And so far, we're 2 for 2 going into the Night Owl tomorrow night. And of course, we wouldn't be here without them. We wouldn't be here without our partners. A big thank you to Race Department for all of your sim racing news, racedepartment.com, aka Informatica, for hosting our servers, and of course Driver 61. You can get 25% off your driver coaching by going to driver61.com and using our discount code. More info in the description. Fanatec.com just launched the new GTDD sort of platform, and you can find all the information about that and order it yourself using our affiliate link in the description below as well. Fanatec.com and SimRacing GP, the best place to race if you're tired, of course, of pub lobbies, and who isn't. SimRacing.gp. Make an account, get started, have some excellent racing there. Well, It was a fantastic racing day here. We were unsure what we were going to get. Ryan Gill, we got an absolute slugfest. It couldn't have been better.
It was absolutely fantastic as well. I think we had cars up there at the front that we really did not expect to be up there at the front. This shake-up, I mean, we're only 2 races in, Jesse, to the new 1.8 update. I'm loving it already. It definitely seems to have shaken up the order of things well and truly. And of course, I think the drivers, the way they're having to adjust to it is absolutely fantastic. We saw some of the best moves I think we've seen in RCI history in this race today. Some fantastic battles. And of course, this man on screen as well, Martin Grady, was a part of some of that. Some incredible battles between himself and Will Stevenson. And of course, I mean, with everything that we've seen here today, I mean, don't miss next week. It could be just as good next week. We have no idea how everything is going to pan out over the course of the rest of the season. But the Friday Championship will return on December 3rd for the 5th round at Kaya Lami. And I have to say, Jesse, forward to that one already. It's on record.
Yeah, it's going to be fantastic going to South Africa again. It's a fan favorite racetrack, and with this new BOP, with these new changes, with how close the racing was before, I can only imagine it's going to be better. Folks, we'll be back with you on Saturday for Night Owl, myself and Ryan Mawson, bringing you the call of that race tomorrow night. Like, subscribe, hit the bell for all of that. And of course, on Monday, continuation of the Porsche Cup with Ryan Gill and Nate. Back again on Thursday, the GT4 Championship with myself, Tim Peck. And next Friday, we'll likely be back here with myself and Ryan Mawson for Kaya Lami. For all of you with us, we hope that you have a fantastic weekend and enjoy the rest of your Friday evening. Until next time, we'll see you.